You just watch a teacher and a cop making out in a classroom with the students around and school just closed. A classroom teacher kissing and having a good rump at the end of school hours with a police officer that is not a husband, not even a boyfriend, but some high school classroom affair? Imagine this, your kids are still on campus. They're in after-school clubs, maybe grabbing a snack in the cafeteria, maybe even walking down the hall. The school, that one place you believe is safe, structured, protected, is still alive with the sounds of students finishing their day.
I suppose that's Hensley's favorite word.
Yeah,
She told me yesterday at the gossip table that I'm a little bit cooler, but we can't tell Officer Hensley. I was like, oh!
Tell him that, because he came in here one day and she was eating lunch in there with me, and she was like, what's my favorite officer doing? And I was like, oh. And so we get her to say that again when Officer Gilley said it. And he was like, oh, no, that's not right. That. She's got my back. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, because she fist bumped me in front of him, and he got so mad. Yeah. And so the next day she completely ignored me. So then yesterday she told me, she was like, well, he told me I had to ignore you, but you're a little cooler. I was like, okay. I was like, that can be our secret. I told her, like, that can be our little secret.
And somewhere behind a closed classroom door, a police officer and a married teacher are having sex. Not rumors, not playground gossip. This is what former Lebanon, Tennessee D.A.R.E. Officer Brian Christopher Gilley admitted himself during an internal investigation.
Here, I can't find it anymore.
You can look.
This is where I was sitting before I left. There it is. Okay.
So now we can look for it. Okay. See ya.
Hi.
That in September 2024, after hours, but while students might still have been on campus, he and Castle Heights elementary teacher Shelby Moss crossed the line in the very building meant to shape young minds. Let's pause right there. Gilley wasn't just some cop passing through. He was the school's D.A.R.E. officer, the man in the uniform standing in front of classrooms, teaching kids about resisting temptation, making good choices, and trusting the police.
Yeah, you do gotta go. You gotta get to your appointment.
Huh?
You gotta get to your appointment.
I gotta be there I could wiggle a few minutes, but
You gotta go. You gotta go. I'll see you tomorrow, though.
Really? You guys see me tomorrow? Okay.
Like, I wouldn't make a point to come see you.
Okay. That's fine. Are you going out this door or that door?
Carla, I'll go out that door.
I'll find that door too. After you do.
He was supposed to be the example, the role model, the safe face in a dangerous world. And Shelby Moss? Not just a teacher, a married teacher. Someone entrusted to guide children academically and morally. Someone whose job is literally to protect them from harmful influences. So how do you go from grading papers to locking the door for a secret rendezvous with the school safety officer? Here's where it gets uncomfortable. This wasn't some hidden off-site affair. This wasn't in a motel on the other side of town. This was on school property with students potentially steps away. And it wasn't the first time lines had been crossed. A month earlier, in August 2024, body-worn camera footage captured the same officer kissing Moss in her classroom right after a student entered and exited. The child's face was blurred in the footage, but the timing? Impossible to ignore. So we have to ask, was this a reckless moment of lust? Or did they both think they were untouchable? Did the badge make him feel safe from consequences? Did the classroom walls make her believe no one would ever know? Parents dropped their children off at school believing those teachers and officers would protect them, not bring scandal to their doorstep. How do you explain to a child that the man who told them to just say no was saying yes to a married teacher in the next room? And the setting matters. Schools are supposed to be sacred ground. They're not just buildings, they're trust contracts between communities and the people we allow inside. When that trust is broken, the damage doesn't end with the adults involved. It seeps into the way children see authority, the way parents see safety, and the way a community sees itself. So what happens when a sworn officer, sworn to protect, gets caught up in an affair on campus? And what happens when the teacher involved gets just a 2-day suspension, while the officer loses his career? Was that justice or just politics? Ask yourself, if it had been your child in the hallway outside that classroom, would you still call it a harmless personal matter? Or would you demand answers? This isn't just about sex. It's about power, hypocrisy, and the dangerous illusion that some people are above consequences. And as you'll see, this scandal didn't just end 2 careers. It tore open conversation about double standards, accountability, and whether our systems are built to protect the public or protect themselves. Stay with me, because if you think the August kiss and the September rendezvous are bad, wait until you hear what happened when the state got involved. Oh, buckle up, because what you're about to hear is the kind of scandal that makes you glance twice at the person wearing a badge. And not because you feel safe, because suddenly you're wondering what exactly goes on when no one's watching. This is Brian Christopher Gilley, your classic small-town hero, a Lebanon Police Department officer, a man assigned to teach the D.A.R.E program at Castle Heights Elementary. You know the drill, the guy in the crisp uniform telling your kids to say no to drugs, make good choices, and trust the police. The friendly face of law and order for little ones. But behind that uniform, Gilley was living a whole different life. Enter Shelby Moss, Castle Heights elementary teacher. Married, educated, someone entrusted to shape young minds and keep them safe. On paper, she's the picture of professionalism. Now, here's where things heat up. August 2024. The school's buzzing, kids moving between classes, paper shuffling, bells ringing. Officer Gilley is in Moss's classroom. But no, this isn't part of a safety talk or a lesson on resisting peer pressure. This was something else entirely. Moments after that student leaves, Gilley leans in and kisses Moss. Right there, in her classroom, while he's on duty, while his body-worn camera is rolling. Yes, that body cam, the one designed to protect the public and hold officers accountable, just documented the officer himself crossing the line. Was this pure arrogance? Or did he simply think nobody would ever look at the footage? Did he forget he was wearing the thing? And this isn't just any officer. This is the role model brought in to tell your kids what's right, what's wrong, and why they should respect authority. You couldn't script a more ironic setup if you tried. Imagine being a parent, thinking your child is safe, thinking this officer is the gold standard of integrity, only to find out he was making out with a married teacher in the very space your kid sits every morning. No, there were no criminal charges. The Lebanon Police Chief Mike Justice himself said the conduct wasn't criminal, didn't involve children, and didn't happen in front of them. But let's be real. How thin is that line when a student literally stepped in and out moments before the kiss? Do we consider that not in front of them or just lucky timing? And this wasn't a one-time lapse. By September 2024, just weeks later, Gilley and Moss were involved in sexual activity on school property after hours. Gilley later admitted students might still have been on campus when it happened. No bodycam footage that time, but the damage? Oh, it was already done. So, uncomfortable question time. How long had this been going on? Was August the start, or just when they got sloppy enough to get caught? Did anyone in the faculty know? And if they did, why didn't anyone speak up? By December 2024, the Lebanon Special School District caught wind of what it called an inappropriate relationship after hours while on campus. Their response? Start an internal review. And yes, Moss was disciplined, but we'll get to that in another chapter. And Officer Gilley? He sat for an internal affairs interview. At first, he denied anything happened while he was on duty, but eventually he admitted it. And then, before the investigation could finish, he resigned. Walked away from the badge. Walked away or ran from the inevitable? Now here's where the public split. Some folks said, it's a private matter, no kids were harmed. Others weren't buying it, arguing that the moment you're in uniform, on school property, and on the clock, you're held to a higher standard. And when you're a school safety officer, that standard should be ironclad. Because what's the point of telling kids to resist temptation? If you can't even resist your own, think about the irony. A D.A.R.E presentation in the morning, a kiss with a married teacher in the afternoon. The same badge meant to enforce rules bent under the weight of personal desires. And maybe the real question is, if the body cam hadn't caught it, Would anyone have ever known? Would he still be teaching kids about integrity today? This is chapter 1 of a scandal that rattled the community, embarrassed a police department, and sparked a bigger debate than anyone saw coming. Because at its core, it's not just about two people making a bad decision. It's about the trust we place in the people who are supposed to protect, teach, and guide our kids, and what happens when they betray that trust. So was this love? Lust? Or the perfect example of what happens when power, access, and temptation meet behind closed doors? August's kiss might have been the spark, but September lit the fire. And this time, there was no blurred student in the background. Only two adults who thought the school was their private playground. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. September 2024. After hours, the corridors are quiet, most classrooms dark. But somewhere inside, behind a closed door, Officer Brian Christopher Gilley and teacher Shelby Moss aren't talking lesson plans. They're crossing a line that no policy manual could possibly excuse. Sexual activity on school grounds. And here's the jaw-dropper. Gilley later admitted that students might still have been on campus. Think about that. Kids in after-school activities, walking to cars, maybe passing the very building where this was happening. Is that just bad judgment, or is it willfully reckless? Was it adrenaline? Arrogance? Or did they both believe they were untouchable? This time there was no body cam footage, no pixelated proof for the evening news. Just Gilley's own words in a later investigation, confirming what went down. But even without video, the damage was inevitable. You can't be the face of school safety by day and treat the school like a dating hideout by night. By December, whispers had turned into something official. The Lebanon Special School District received a report of what they politely called an inappropriate relationship after hours while on campus. Polite wording for a not-so-polite situation. An internal review began. Behind closed doors, questions flew. Who knew what and when? Did administrators suspect something back in August when the body cam footage surfaced? Or were they just blindsided now? And here's a thought. If the September encounter hadn't been admitted by Gilley himself, would anyone have pursued it? Or would it have been quietly swept under the staff lounge rug? This wasn't just a school matter anymore. The Lebanon Police Department's Internal Affairs Unit stepped in. Gilley was called in for questioning. An officer now, under the same investigative spotlight he'd once helped shine on others. They asked him straight, did you engage in sexual contact with a teacher while on school property? While on duty? At first, he said no. Denied it happened while he was working. But here's the problem. By then, investigators already had the August kiss on camera. They knew he'd been in that classroom. They knew this wasn't just a hallway flirtation. And eventually, Gilley broke. Admitted to the relationship. Admitted to the September encounter. Game over. And then, before the investigation could even finish, he resigned. No final defense, no public fight to keep the badge. Just out. Was it resignation or strategic retreat? Did he step down to save what was left of his dignity, or to avoid the even bigger humiliation of being fired on the record? The public reaction was a storm. Some said, it's private, two consenting adults, case closed. Others called it a blatant abuse of trust, arguing that when you're on the clock in uniform and in a school, your personal life is public business. And remember, this wasn't just a backroom romance. This was the school's assigned safety officer, the man parents trusted to keep watch over their children. That badge was supposed to be a symbol of authority, not a backstage pass. And what about Moss, the married teacher in the middle of this? Her fate couldn't have been more different. After the district's review, she got a 2-day suspension. 2 days. That's the kind of punishment you give for showing up late too many times, not for engaging in sexual activity on school grounds with a uniformed officer. So why the difference? Was the district protecting its own? Or was the police department making an example out of Gilley while the school quietly minimized Moss's role? She went back to teaching after her suspension. No public apology. No comment to the press. Just business as usual. Meanwhile, Gilley's policing career was already on life support. And here's the part that keeps people talking. If there had been no body cam in August, no admission in September, would this have ever seen daylight? Or would it still be an open secret whispered about in hallways but never acted on? When public servants cross the line, the fallout isn't just about rules broken, it's about the erosion of trust. How many parents, after hearing this, started questioning who else in positions of authority might be blurring boundaries? And here's a question to chew on. Should punishment be equal for both parties when the misconduct is shared? Or is it fair that one loses an entire career while the other gets a slap on the wrist? In the end, the kiss was just the beginning. The real scandal was how differently the system handled the two people who made the same choice. By the time April 2025 rolled around, the whispers had turned into headlines, and the headlines had turned into a formal reckoning. This wasn't just a local embarrassment anymore. The state was about to decide whether Brian Christopher Gilley would ever wear a badge again. Enter the post-commission hearing, a place where careers live or die in a matter of minutes. Gilley's name was on the docket. His case? Simple on paper. Resignation during an active internal investigation into on-campus sexual misconduct with a teacher. He walked into that room carrying not just a folder of paperwork, but the weight of every headline, every leaked still from that August bodycam, every whispered conversation in Lebanon. This wasn't about whether the kiss happened. This wasn't about whether September's after-hours encounter took place. He'd already admitted to both. The question now is, does a man who did that get to keep the title of police officer in Tennessee? And here's the twist. Gilley didn't storm in defiantly. He didn't try to fight the facts. He asked for leniency. He told the commission he was embarrassed, that he'd learned his lesson, that this was a mistake, not a reflection of who he truly was. But the panel? They weren't looking at an isolated mistake. They were looking at the bigger picture, a sworn officer in uniform on school property involved in a relationship with a married teacher and caught by his own bodycam. After discussion, the vote came down. The decision? Permanent decertification. The Tennessee Post Commission officially banned Brian Christopher Gilley from ever working as a police officer in the state again. No suspension, no probation, just career over. And just like that, the man once trusted to teach kids about integrity and responsibility was stripped of the badge for good. While Gilley's career was being buried at the Post Commission, Shelby Moss was still teaching. Remember, the same Moss who had shared that August kiss in her classroom and the after-hours September encounter on school grounds. In May 2025, the Lebanon Special School District confirmed Moss had resigned, but not before serving her 2-day suspension and finishing out months of teaching after the scandal broke internally. So let's pause for a second. Gilley, fired, banned for life from policing, publicly named in state records. Moss, suspended for 48 hours, allowed to keep teaching until she decided to resign. Does that sound balanced to you? The Tennessee State Board of Education is now reviewing Moss's teaching license. But as of the last public reports, no decision has been announced. Which raises yet another question. Why does one system move at lightning speed to destroy a career, while another seems to take its sweet time? This is where the public split into two camps, and the debate got ugly. One side says Gilley was punished harder because police officers are held to a higher standard. They argue that when you're armed, sworn, and in uniform, you can't afford even the appearance of impropriety. The other side says it's a blatant double standard, that Moss shared equal responsibility for the misconduct, same location, same acts, but faced a fraction of the consequences. Was she protected by the district? By the slower-moving state licensing process? Or was this simply about optics, that decertifying a cop looks good for accountability headlines? And here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. If the roles had been reversed and it was a female officer and a male teacher, would the punishment still be the same? The Post Commission made their call. The school district closed its file. But the air in Lebanon is still thick with unanswered questions. When exactly did the relationship start? Was August really the beginning, or just a moment they got sloppy enough to get caught? Who knew? Were there colleagues who noticed? Did anyone warn either of them before it spiraled into a state-level scandal? How much protection did Moss get? Would her license still be active if the media hadn't picked up the story? And what about the kids? Even if no child was directly harmed, how does a community rebuild trust when the role models fail so publicly? Sometimes the scandal isn't just the act. It's the way the system handles the aftermath. Parents told reporters they were blindsided. Some said they'd always liked Gilley, that he seemed like a good guy with the kids. Others admitted they'd never trusted him fully, that something about the situation felt off even before the story broke. By late May 2025, the book officially closed on Gilley's law enforcement career. His badge is gone, his reputation shredded. For Moss, the chapter ended with a resignation, but no final word yet on whether she'll ever teach again. So now it's your turn. Was the punishment fair? Was Gilley held to the right standard? Or was he made into the poster child for what happens when you embarrass the wrong people? Should Moss face the same lifetime ban from her profession? Or does a quick suspension and quiet resignation suffice? Because here's the thing, scandals like this aren't rare. They just don't always get caught on camera. And when they do, the fallout depends less on the facts and more on who's holding the gavel. If you think this is just a small town affair, think again. This is a blueprint for how power, image, and selective accountability collide. And if you don't ask questions now, the next time, you might not even see it coming.